Well, I'd say it's about time for another DDO update. I've got to say, this one just feels good to make. With everything that happened in the wake of the last update between the server transfer and some of the gameplay issues, I actually took something of a sabbatical from old DDO for what was probably the better part of a month and a half. See, after the server and character transfer and the mess that all of that was, I just couldn't really play the game. Tried multiple times and had a lot of lag, namely. So I decided to wait a while before diving back in. I wasn't the only person that this was happening to, so it just seemed better to wait it out, and I almost certainly waited longer than was truly necessary, according to the internet. It seems like it was totally fixed after about 2 or 3 weeks, but seeing as I already went hard in the paint about how ridiculous I thought the process of the transfer was, continuing to play the game in that hacksawed state just didn't really seem fair to me. Like, I'm certainly going to evaluate things that happen around and outside of the game. You'll see that later in this video itself, but I also want to be as objective towards the game from a gameplay standpoint and whatnot as humanly possible. It's pretty hard to be objective about the game itself when you're willingly playing it in a diminished state, if you get what I mean. But everything's fine now, and I've had a ball finally diving into some of the epic level content that I've now got access to since we've reached level 20. Now, there isn't all that much that's fundamentally different between the quests at heroic difficulty, which is what you play for levels 1 through 19, and epic, which is what you play from level 20 onward. The epic quests are mostly just harder. Enemies both take and deal more damage, and in certain instances there are new traps and obstacles that must be tackled. Even if many of the quests aren't changed all that much, it just feels like a nice refresh for the content as a whole. The upped difficulty serves as an active affirmation that your character is getting stronger. The way that calls get closer, that you really have to stretch when you utilize your rest shrines throughout the level, and make sure you're properly suited and booted from start to finish, is awesome. It's a real approachable level to difficulty that, at least in my opinion, only makes the content better. I would have liked to see more of this type of challenge in the heroic content, if I'm being totally honest, because there are times when the grind from 1 through 19 starts to feel a bit, not necessarily formulaic, but it doesn't engage all that much, if you get what I mean. There are certain parts that do and certain quests that do more than others, but there are certain points where it starts to feel like you're just doing it to do it, as opposed to actually enjoying doing it. And all of the epic content I've done because of the extra challenge, it's really far more engaging, and I've really enjoyed it. Doesn't mean the heroic stuff was bad. I think just in comparison, the epic stuff is better from that standpoint. What we're playing these harder quests for is not continued class progression that ends once you hit 20, but instead destiny points. Destiny points let you fill out skill trees, not unlike the enhancement trees present for levels 1 through 19, except as you might expect, the skills and stats gained by these epic destinies are far, far stronger than anything the enhancement trees provided. Heck, there are probably arguments to be made that a lot of the boons from these epic destinies are stronger than class skills. And after swearing to check them out in the last update, I can confirm that I have, and am totally, entirely into them. I'm not saying I disliked the class leveling, certainly not, but the fact that the benefits of the epic destinies are so strong, combined with that you get to choose not only the skills you acquire, but the trees themselves as well, means that they give you a lot more say in how your character is built. You would really only get that sort of autonomy with the class leveling when you got things like feats, so every 3 levels. The epic destiny trees give you that choice every rank, let alone entire levels. I completely love it, and it's unquestionably revitalized my desire to quest and grind again. As much fun as I'm once again having, I am starting to ponder the reality of just how much longer I can actually play this game. Like, I want to see as much as I possibly can before I make the final, in all likelihood, long-form video, but there is just so much content in this game. I could easily play it for another year or two, and perhaps I will. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that, but the need to at some point actually make said final video does feel like it only gets stronger as time goes on. Ironically though, my intention with this specific update wasn't actually to talk much about the game itself. No, I want to use this video to talk about some news that broke earlier in the fall. Back in September, the president of Wizards of the Coast, a fellow by the name of John Haidt, proclaimed that he would, quote, love to have a new D&D MMO. Alright, so look. Maybe this shouldn't have made me as mad as it did. In fact, it almost certainly shouldn't have. But man, talk about disrespect. First of all, I'll preface this by saying that I do get why this type of thing would be top of mind for Haidt. Before he was the president of everyone's favorite company, he worked as a producer for World of Warcraft at Blizzard. MMOs are very clearly his thing, so it makes sense that he would want to make one with the D&D IP, and that's just fine and dandy. With that being said, I would expect someone well-versed in MMOs to be open-minded enough to realize that D&D has no need for a new MMO because it's got one already that is more than worth people's time. Hell, I would imagine it's got two. I can't speak to the kind of game Neverwinter is, but that game's been trucking along for a good while at this point, so people must be playing that one as well. DDO at this point is everything that Wizards should want in a D&D MMO. It faithfully adapts the rule set it's built for, that being one of the more popular rule sets in the history of the game. It takes place in a world that they are literally planning to release a new sourcebook for this December, just a few weeks from when I'm recording this voiceover. It has a pedigree spanning nearly 2 decades, an existing player base, and likely most importantly is so packed to the gills with content that it would take the average player years to get through it all. The reason that Wizards flatly does not care about any of that is because they just do not care about old products or versions of D&D. They love the nostalgia they can provide, they love reselling old products on reprint websites and whatnot, but they have absolutely zero interest in actually developing anything related to Dungeons & Dragons that isn't associated with the newest version of the game. If Wizards can't attach it to the latest actual play series or whatever digital platform they're trying to convince people to use, then they do not see the value in it. To the point that they would rather wade into the ridiculously volatile and failure-laden market that is MMOs in 2025 with a new game than make use of the one they already have. And what sucks most about that is that if the recent debacle with the server and character transfers showed anything, it's that if DDO could really use anything at this point, it would be more support. Daybreak Games is a big company, sure, but the support Wizards could give them, even if it's just monetary, would absolutely trounce whatever they currently have at their disposal. Truly, at this point, with the way it plays, the only thing DDO might need is a bit of a facelift and some work under the hood. Wizards almost certainly would have the resources to make those things happen, and they're too stupid to actually do so. Part of the reason I originally wanted to start reviewing and analyzing this game was frankly because it is one of the biggest successes of modern D&D video gaming. Like, outside of Baldur's Gate 3, there is unquestionably an argument to be made that DDO is the most successful Dungeons & Dragons video game in the past 25 years or so after Baldur's Gate 2. The pickings have been pretty slim over that period of time, and I am thrilled to say that DDO, at bare minimum, is proof that modern D&D gaming isn't a complete lost cause, and probably a lot more than that on its own merit. But because it isn't new and shiny, Wizards couldn't care less about it. Maybe I'm unnecessarily getting on a soapbox, but I do think that wishcasting to replace DDO with a new MMO, because that's effectively what said new game would be doing, even if it isn't explicitly intended to do so, is disrespectful. Dungeons & Dragons Online is awesome as it is, it could be even better with some more support from those in the position to provide it, and it's outright disheartening to see the head of the company, an MMO veteran, be too short-sighted to see that. Wizards of the Coast's recent record with new games is pretty awful. So if they do actually make a new MMO, I won't be holding my breath that it'll be anything worthwhile. But that's fine, because as I just explained, we've got one that's more than worth playing. And if only Wizards would recognize that.